You know, when it comes to 10 years later, I don't think there's been one 2010 album that has hung over my head more than this one. As soon as I started thinking up this series, this album was always on my mind. I even had a few friends that would ask me if I was going to cover it. And lo and behold, here we are. Welcome back to 10 Years Later, the series where I talk about albums from the 2010s that were either impactful to me, impactful to music in general, very popular, or just worth revisiting 10 years later for good or bad reasons. And here we go. You guys know what it's time for. As you can tell from the title, the album that we will be discussing today is the 2010 Kanye West album, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Kanye West, we know by now. I don't need to introduce the man or his legacy, and quite frankly, I don't think I really need to introduce this album. Made in the midst of one of the lowest points in Kanye's career, after a lot of public ridicule for that VMA situation with Taylor Swift, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy was one of the highest rated albums of 2010, one of the biggest records of the past decade, and a record that around these parts has become a bit infamous because certain music reviewers had a few unique takes on it. While I was familiar with this record's biggest singles back in the day, like Power and All of the Lights, I never really listened to the project in its entirety, as once again, I didn't really start listening to albums fully until around 2016 and 2017. This album though was one I knew I had to look at because quite frankly, when it comes to music in the last decade, you really can't talk about 2010 without talking about My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And having never gotten to listen to it in its entirety, I was excited to do that for this video. The album is 13 tracks, but it's just over an hour because several of the songs can get a bit long, ranging from being 6 to 7 to even 9 minutes long. And as someone that isn't really crazy about long tracks, I wonder if that would stop me from enjoying the project. Fortunately, the length isn't a problem, and this album is just as amazing as it was in 2010. The kickoff track, Dark Fantasy, is a beautiful opening, with a varied instrumental that sounds heavenly but transitions into something a bit harder. Kanye sounds great as he tackles the dark sides of fame, and he brings out the best of his many collaborators on the track. Nicki Minaj comes through with this clever, almost storybook-like intro, and the combined chorus from Justin Vernon of Bon Iver and Teyana Taylor feels almost heaven-sent. It's quite a stunner. Gorgeous takes things in more of a psychedelic direction with a more guitar-twinged art rock sound. Kanye's verse is layered with some filters, but that doesn't stop it from being so compelling, as he nicely weaves his lyrics about injustice pretty excellently. I also love Kid Cudi's smooth chorus and the twisty flows from Raekwon of Wu-Tang Clan. Then there is the iconic single Power, where Kanye raps confidently over a beat that flips King Crimson's 21st Century Schizoid Man. We know that Power is one of Kanye's biggest tracks, and it's still far and away one of his bests. Lyrically, it's still relevant to this day. It encapsulates everything about Kanye from the good to the bad, and it's a thundering track with Kanye going appropriately hard with his flows. There's not much more I can say about the track other than that it's a genuine Kanye classic. There's also another iconic single that follows in All of the Lights, but that's preceded by an interlude of the same name. Said interlude is just a minute long, but while it lasts, it's a beautifully composed piano and cello version of the instrumental of the actual song, and when the proper song kicks in, you already know what's going down. There's several different guest vocalists here, from Kid Cudi, Fergie, Alicia Keys, Elton John, Drake, John Legend, and plenty more, but the only proper feature is Rihanna, who handles the chorus. Said hook is obviously very well sung, and Kanye also bears it all in the song, talking about his personal problems on a very celebratory, massive instrumental. It's another twisty track and definitely a huge high point in Kanye's discography. And Monster is one of the many posse cuts on here, featuring all of Jay-Z, Justin Vernon of Bon Iver, Rick Ross, and of course, Nicki Minaj. The song takes a lot of different turns, showcasing how each artist is a monster on the mic, with a bouncy beat to back them all up. Justin Vernon has a few very dark filtered vocals. Rick Ross is only here for a few bars, but he brings his usual energy on the song. Kanye's flow is twisty and hard-hitting as he rapid fires through the song, and Jay-Z's rhyme schemes are as strong as ever. And Nicki Minaj, I think we all know by now, pretty much dropped the verse of her life on this track. To this day, many still see Nicki's monster verse as perhaps her greatest ever, and I mean, why not? She incorporates a number of her personas into the song, and the rhymes and bars are some of the most clever and memorable of her entire discography. On a track released just a few months before Nicki's own debut album, she delivered what I would call a career-defining verse, and one that's still honestly the highlight of the song. It's not easy to stand up on a posse cut with Kanye, Jay-Z, and Rick Ross and outshine all of them, but Nicki actually managed to do that in my eyes. So Appalled is another posse cut where Jay-Z returns, but he and Ye are now joined by Pusha T, Sci-Hi the Prince, Swizz Beatz, and RZA of Wu-Tang Clan. It's a song with a dramatic instrumental, a decent refrain from Swizz Beatz, and the same catchy flows that Kanye comes through with all throughout the album. Jay-Z's verse is even more energetic than his monster verse, with even more clever braggadocious bars that easily stand out. Sci-Hi the Prince's accidental verse that wasn't supposed to be here is awesome. I'm glad it actually did make the track. And Pusha T has a standout performance as well. It seems this was one of his breakthrough solo verses, and yeah, I see it. His confidence is palpable as he raps about how much success he's created for himself, and it's a pretty great moment. Round out the song with a hard hook from RZA, and you've got quite a banger. Devil in a New Dress is a more soulful song about Kanye's love of sex, and I think the lovely background vocals add well to the vibe of the song. Kanye's flows make things a bit better, as does the excellent Mike Dean guitar solo in the middle of the song, and Rick Ross's verse is also full of excellent energy as he delivers what might be one of the better performances in his career. I think a lot of his bars are definitely pretty clever, and he manages to stand out on the song just as Ye does. And then there's Runaway, a 9-minute epic that Kanye made as a toast to the douchebags. Last thing I'd expect anyone to make a toast to. Regardless, I was definitely worried going into it about the 9-minute length, but I ended up loving just how spine-tingling the song is. The dramatic single piano notes on the instrumental are very catchy, and while Kanye is a bit more singy on the song, I actually think his vocals sound pretty good and fit the vibe very nicely. Pusha T's verse also sounds great. I'm sure he'd hope so, given that Kanye made him rewrite it 4 times. And the song fortunately stays interesting despite its length, even in the final minutes where most of it is just Kanye singing through a vocoder. The instrumental twists and turns so much that the song remains excellent. Hell of a Life continues Kanye's odyssey into the pros and cons of fame by discussing an experience of having a one-night stand with a porn star. It's a much more experimental song with more aggressive instrumentation and darker imagery. Ye is perfect for this kind of production though, and I was also impressed by his interpolation of Black Sabbath's Iron Man on the chorus. It's easily one of my favorite hooks on the album, and even as one of the few tracks that Kanye handles pretty much on his own, it's pretty excellent. Blame Game is another soulful jam that's nearly 8 minutes in length, though the length isn't a point of detriment for the song. It's a lighter, more piano-driven track with a beautiful hook from featured artist John Legend, and Kanye himself raps very dark lyrics about the painful parts of love in one of his most interesting performances here. I love the way his vocals are filtered and mixed, and how it sounds like you're listening to a confused train of thought with Kanye's different voices. It's a pretty great track that's rounded out with a well-acted spoken word outro from Chris Rock. Lost in the World is a more poppy track with some auto-tune assisted vocals from Justin Vernon of Bon Iver. It's a very surprising turn on the album that plays more like a piece of art pop, but is still a great listen. Kanye and Justin have some solid vocal interplay on the chorus, and Kanye's flow fits perfectly amidst the more bouncy beat. And Who Will Survive in America is a closer that builds on the instrumental of Lost in the World, but features a spoken word passage from Gil Scott-Heron. The passage serves to sum up the album and its mission statement about whether fame and fortune is worth it. And while I'm usually not crazy about spoken word tracks, the instrumental and Gil's words match so perfectly that the song ends up being a winner. Overall, yeah, I can see why this thing is so widely loved. Kanye put on quite a show with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy at a time where he pretty much had everything to prove. While the album isn't so much a measured, direct response to the VMA situation that got him such massive hate, in fact, Taylor Swift and that situation pretty much don't get brought up here, it's more of a direct look into the mind of Kanye after his self-imposed Hawaiian exile in 2009. And what we have here is pretty awesome stuff. I think the production can be very in-your-face, but still excellent to listen to, as Kanye warps between a number of different styles and genres, and his sample hunting is as great as ever. Many of Kanye's best hits reside on this project, and a lot of that comes thanks to his amazing production. Kanye himself also proves to be a strong performer, and I think his lyricism is as tight and focused as ever, free from some of the cringe bars that have popped up on his latest albums. What's more, Kanye brings out the best and then some in his features, as a lot of the guest acts here end up delivering some of the best moments and performances in their careers. This album is a top-to-bottom masterpiece, and I can totally see why it's maintained such an excellent legacy. I don't know if Kanye will ever be able to top it, he hasn't seemed to in the years since, but regardless, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is most certainly going to live on as Kanye's classic. It's hard to say if the record is as influential as 808s and Heartbreak, for example, but My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy may be perhaps the most essential album in Kanye's illustrious discography. Back in 2010, I enjoyed several of the big singles off of this thing, so I could have seen myself liking the album, and listening to it now, I definitely see what all the hype was about. If I had to put it on my scale, it would definitely get an excellent rating from me, and while you can make a lot out of Kanye today, I have to say that he made a pretty incredible record with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I know it took me a while to get around to the album, but I'm glad I eventually did. But that's just my opinion on this project. What did you guys think about it? I'm sure the answer is going to be yes, but did you listen to it back in 2010? Do you still listen to it now? Did you love it then, hate it then, love it now, hate it now? Are you indifferent towards it? And would you say this album is Kanye's magnum opus? Or is there a Kanye record that you love more than this? Whatever your thoughts are, whatever your experiences are, leave them down in the comments. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. deal, I totally understand. And if you guys want to subscribe to my OnlyFans where I create exclusive content for my music reviews and my poetry for $4.99 a month, the link to that will be in the description. As always, I appreciate anyone who does, but if you can't, it's no big deal. I won't beg you for it. And November is going to remain busy for this series because the next album that I plan to talk about on 10 Years Later is Nicki Minaj's Pink Friday. I know that was a pretty huge album and there's going to be a lot to say about it, so I'm very interested in checking it out for myself. So stay tuned for that, but until next time, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.